Hi everybody! From robbers who dig tunnels directly beneath the bank they're ransacking to despots who technically aren't even breaking the law, here are 8 of the most brilliant robberies ever. Carlton Hotel Pink Panthers. One French thief took advantage of an unguarded situation in 2013 and got away with the biggest dollar amount ever stolen in French history, the total amount adding up to around $136 million. Really, it was just a matter of walking right in and walking right out. He took the jewels from a private hotel room which was displaying an exhibition of jewelry from Lev Leviev, an Israeli billionaire who is often referred to as the King of Diamonds. It didn't have much in the way of security. There were only a couple of guards and they didn't even have any guns, so it was fairly easy for this Pink Panther to get away with the goods. Funnily enough, he even tripped as he jumped out the window through which he came, but he just grabbed the jewels back from the ground and kept running. Most think that this thief is one of the Pink Panthers, a group of jewel burglars named after the famous movies. It took just 1 minute, but it was an incredible score, and for one man with a pistol and a baseball bat, it's even crazier to think that he's never been caught. All of that money is still missing, and no plausible suspects have risen to the fore. It might seem simple, but it probably took a lot of planning for this robbery to end up a success. The Great Train Robbery. The Great Train Robbery of 1963 is one of the most ingenious robberies ever carried out. The burglars carried this robbery out on a bank holiday so that their loot would be worth more money, and it ended up being worth a lot more money than they could have initially planned for. In total, the amount of cash that they got away with would have been worth around $373,000 at the time, but because of the holiday, that price skyrocketed up to about $37 million. But wait, how did these robbers rob a train and get away with so much money? It's not like they ransacked a bank vault or anything. Well, on the information of someone who knew how the trains ran and what they carried, 15 men held up the Glasgow-London Royal Mail train. They put a stop to the train's course by switching the green signal to a red one with the use of batteries. Confused, train operators went to investigate and were promptly incapacitated. Then the robbers stole the mail from the carriage that contained packages worth a lot of money and took it to their secret hideaway. The plan was worked out in incredible detail, but not good enough apparently. Some of the men burned down their safe house, but not enough to eliminate all of the fingerprints, and 12 of the original 15 robbers were caught. However, in terms of cleverness, this robbery is second to none. They robbed a train without even using guns and stole way more money than they originally intended. Boston Museum Heist. In 1990, 2 people barged into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, Massachusetts, and got away with the biggest art heist in history, stealing an estimated $500 million worth of fine art. And crazily enough, the pair still remains at large. If you go onto the museum's website, they advertise a $10 million reward for any info that might get the art back inside the museum and the duo behind bars. Late into the night, the 2 men came up to the museum dressed in police clothing, telling the security guards there that they'd been called to the area in order to investigate a disruption. The guards let them through, which turned out to be a big mistake. The men then pretended to arrest the guards, handcuffing the both of them. They proceeded to tell the guards their real plan. They were there to steal hundreds of millions of dollars worth of art. Then they put duct tape around the guards' eyes and tucked them away into the basement. They even told the guards that if they didn't say anything, they'd get some cash in return after a year. They made away with works from Vermeer, Rembrandt, and more. The police had some ideas for suspects, but to this day, they're still not sure who did it. The museum now has empty frames where the artworks used to be. Have you ever seen these frames before? Tell me about it in the comments. D.B. Cooper. The so-called D.B. Cooper stole $200,000 and skydived away, never to be seen again. Without a doubt, his story is one of the most mysterious robberies that's ever occurred. It all happened on November 24th, 1971, when a man who went by the name D.B. Cooper bought a one-way ticket to Seattle. He was well-dressed and polite, even getting himself a drink once he boarded the flight. However, after a short while, he gave a stewardess a note indicating that his briefcase was a bomb and that he wanted $200,000 and 4 parachutes. He wasn't lying either. He showed the stewardess the wires inside his briefcase. Naturally, the stewardess complied. They delivered Cooper's money and parachutes once they'd arrived in Seattle. Then the other passengers were released and he and the crew set into the air once more towards Mexico City. However, once they got into the air, DB did something nobody expected. He dove straight from the back of the plane through the sky at night. Everybody on board was okay, but Cooper was nowhere to be seen, and to this day, even though hundreds of suspects have been interviewed, he's never officially been captured. They thought one who'd been arrested for a similar hijacking might have done it, but he didn't look anything like Cooper. Maybe he died, maybe he got away with it, we may never know, but his case is definitely intriguing. Central Bank of Iraq robbery. One day before US troops went into Baghdad, Saddam Hussein orchestrated the biggest bank heist in history in terms of dollar amount. It was worth around $1 billion. Even though he did not take the money directly, he got his son to go in his stead. It wasn't all that difficult. 3 trucks pulled up outside the Central Bank of Iraq, and his son walked inside with a note from his father. This note said that Saddam needed to get the money as fast as possible for the security of Iraq. The rest is history. They didn't even have to intimidate anyone or use a gun. The bank tellers couldn't do anything, of course. Their despot had ordered them to hand over the money. Were they going to say no? So Saddam's son and his friend just stuffed bags upon bags full of dough, loaded it into those 3 trucks, and drove away. No one other than Saddam would have been able to pull this off. The bank's vault itself is impossible to get into. Over the years, officials were able to locate some of this stolen money. For instance, they found $650 million in one of his palaces, but Saddam didn't give any further info. And we all know that at the end of the day, he didn't get away with it, and neither did either of his sons. But there's still cash out there, and technically, because he was the country's leader at the time, he might not have been even breaking the law. Antwerp diamond heist. The Antwerp diamond heist, after it was originally performed, was called the heist of the century, and for good reason. The perpetrators of this heist were able to get away with more than $100 million worth of fine gold, silver, and diamonds, and as well as other jewelry. The so-called School of Turin who carried out the robbery have been arrested, but their loot has never been found. The heist was orchestrated by Leonardo Notarbartolo, who'd been a thief since he was 8 years old. The Antwerp Diamond District in Antwerp, Belgium, is one of the most highly guarded districts in the world because there are billions of dollars in jewels flowing through it every year. But that couldn't stop the School of Turin. They employed a clever trick to bypass all the security cameras, locks, and various sensors. They employed aluminum to confuse them, and they almost got away with it, too. If it wasn't for Notarbartolo's friend Speedy, who demanded they pull over after the robbery due to a panic attack. Speedy threw a lot of jewels into the woods, and they recovered most of it afterwards, but not enough. They left some jewels on a hermit's private property who turned in the crew. However, they were never able to find the rest of the jewels. They only got $20 million from the complete $100 million that went missing. So maybe some people are still living large on this ingenious heist. Frank Abagnale. Frank Abagnale is one of the most notorious con artists that the world has ever seen. What's more, Abagnale didn't wait until he had grown up to commit his schemes. Instead, he started at the ripe age of 15. At that time, he was inclined to concocting credit card schemes, and then he moved up to impersonating fake identities. He started writing faulty checks everywhere he went, and he took on different identities. At one point pretending to be an airline pilot, at another pretending to be a doctor. Of course, even though he'd found a way to settle down for a little while with millions he made in bad checks, Abagnale was arrested. However, he was able to hatch a scheme with his friend where he pretended to be an FBI prison inspector. He was able to use a forged business card to convince the guards that he was an inspector who needed to talk to his coworkers on the outside, and incredibly, they let him out. Eventually, he was caught again and spent another 4 years in prison. After being released, he became a consultant for the FBI, where he still works on cases related to forgery and fraud. He even had a movie based on his life, Catch Me If You Can, where he's played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Looks like things went pretty well for this brilliant criminal. Banco Central burglary. A group of Brazilian burglars robbed the Banco Central, Brazil's central bank, of around $70 million, and to this day, most of that money remains uncovered. But more interesting than the literal amount that they took is the brilliant way that they took it. They played a long con. Over the course of 3 months, they pretended to be a landscaping company, all while they were devising a way to get into the bank. How did they make this work? Before executing their robbery, they rented a building in downtown Fortaleza, Brazil, about a football field away from the Banco Central. They placed signs out front which indicated that they were a landscaping business and claimed to sell plants and fake grass. While there, however, they spent their time building a 256-foot underground tunnel that led directly under the bank they were going to rob. This tunnel even had ventilation and wooden walls. Finally, after 3 months, they broke through the vault from below, and they took a lot, the equivalent of $70 million. Given the weight of their treasure, it would have taken forever to transport all of it, but they got away. Up to now, most of the money hasn't been recovered. Some of the robbers have shown up dead, though, and a few have been arrested. But it's still crazy to think just how successful these robbers were with their inventive plan. Thanks to everyone for watching. Who do you think is the most brilliant burglar on this list? Let me know down below, and be sure to like this video and click that notification bell to get updated every time we release our newest videos. See you again soon!